All right, let's jump right in. We're going to break down a whole new way of looking at student behavior. It's a shift away from old school discipline and towards a really smart, structured system of support. Just think about that for a second. For so long, the model has been, react after something goes wrong. But what if we could actually get ahead of the curve? And that is the core idea we're exploring today. A system that isn't built on punishment, but on proactively creating the right environment and skills for every single student to succeed. So what is this new plan? It's called the Multi-Tiered System of Support, or MTSS for short. Think of it as a complete framework that uses different levels of support to give students exactly what they need when they need it. This gives us a super clear roadmap for the whole system, and it's built just like a pyramid. At the very bottom, that wide base, that's universal support for everyone. Then, that middle tier is for some students who might need a little extra help. And at the very peak are the intensive supports for the very few who really need it. So let's start at the foundation, Tier 1. Now, this isn't some special program. This is the high-quality teaching and positive environment that every single student should be getting, every single day. It's the bedrock of the entire system. So what does this foundation actually look like? Well, it's a mix of some really powerful strategies. We're talking about things like character education, consistent positive reinforcement, and mental health awareness training for staff. And what holds it all together is solid classroom organization and teachers constantly collaborating in what are known as professional learning communities, or PLCs. A really critical tool inside Tier I is something called the STOIC framework. And no, it has nothing to do with being emotionless. It's actually a super clever acronym for how to organize a classroom so kids can really learn. It's all about making the classroom a predictable, safe, and engaging space. And here's just how practical it is. STOIC stands for Structure Your Classroom for Success. Teach students exactly what you expect. Observe their behavior, systematically. Interact with them positively. And when misbehavior does happen, correct it calmly and consistently. It's such a simple, memorable loop for teachers. Okay, so that's the foundation for everybody. Now let's move up the pyramid to the next level. We're in Tier 2, which is all about targeted help for students who need a bit more than what Tier 1 offers. This is the key question that moves a student up the pyramid. If a student is still struggling, even in a great Tier 1 environment, the system doesn't just wait for them to fail. It asks, okay, what more can we do? And the answer is Tier 2. Now, this is really important. This isn't about pulling a student out into a separate program. It's about amping up the support, making it more structured, more frequent, more tailored to them, right inside their regular classroom. So how do you figure out exactly what kind of support a student needs? Well, the system relies on data, not guesswork. A key tool here is the SABRS assessment. It's a quick screener teachers can use to pinpoint if a student's risk is mainly social, academic, or emotional. Let's break that down. The assessment looks at 3 key areas. Social behavior is, how well they get along with others. Academic behavior is all about being prepared and participating in class. And emotional behavior measures how well a student can handle stress and manage their feelings. This data makes the help they get incredibly specific. For older students, the interventions get a little more sophisticated. They might actually work with the teacher to create a behavior contract that lays out clear goals. Or, if something happened, they might use a restitution contract. This isn't about punishment. It's about taking responsibility and figuring out how to make things right. It's a total shift from consequence to restoration. And now we've made it to the top of the pyramid, Tier 3. This level is reserved for students with the most persistent and challenging needs, the ones who haven't responded to the first 2 tiers of support. And I want you to look at this number. In a really well-functioning system, the goal is for fewer than 10% of students to ever need this level of support. The whole point is to solve problems lower down the pyramid. At Tier 3, the intensity really ramps up. This is where a formal student intervention team, or SIT, gets together. They'll do another, deeper assessment to get more data, they'll revise the student's behavior contract, and they'll start much more detailed behavior tracking to find patterns. So we've talked about the what of this whole system, but the who and the how are just as important. None of this can work in a vacuum. It's all powered by people working together. Ultimately, when you boil everything we've talked about down, it's built on 2 pillars: using real data, not just guesswork, to make decisions, and constant, effective collaboration between all the adults in a kid's corner. And you can really see that collaboration in the student intervention team. I mean, look who's at the table. You've got an administrator, the school counselor, teachers, a school psychologist, and even the parent. This brings a complete 360-degree view of the student to create the best possible plan. Okay, so let's pull all the way back and look at the big picture. Why go through all this trouble? What is the ultimate goal of a system like MTSS? This right here is the payoff. When you switch from being reactive to proactive, you stop just managing behavior for the sake of compliance. You start actually teaching the underlying skills, the character, the self-control, the empathy that students need to thrive for the rest of their lives. You know, this quote from the source material really just says it all. The quality of the system doesn't come from a binder sitting on a shelf. It comes from the people involved, actually talking to each other, sharing data, and working together, day in and day out, for the student. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. A system like this really forces us to ask a fundamental question about our schools. Are we just trying to get students to follow the rules, or are we trying to help them become the best versions of themselves? Because the answer to that question, well, it changes everything.